Hey, what is up, ProtocolX fam, PTX fam? Here with Bran. This is Shibboy to go over our weekly Alpha Monday AMA to go over the latest and greatest of ProtocolX, go over what has recently happened, what's currently being worked on by the team here, and also what is to come in the future. We have a lot of pretty big and significant things to go over. Obviously, we just launched a version 2 of our token late, actually early yesterday, technically very late the day before perhaps. So we have some good updates there. Obviously, we're going to go into some other information in reference to the XShare NFTs, PUSD, ideally maybe some locked vaults, question mark. There could be some pretty cool things coming on with all of that there. So we are genuinely excited to have you all join us. Please, if you guys do have any questions for us during this AMA, simply request to speak live here on stage or post away in the AMA Questions Weekly channel, and we will answer your question live up here. Again, like I said, I am joined here with me by Bran. What's going on, Bran? How you doing today?
Hey, how you doing, Shib? Yeah, no, lovely to finally be here. Our first AMA on V2. We don't really like calling it V2. We call it the enhanced version of PTX. A lot of good discussions, a lot of good things going. I'm really happy that we've fully launched a very successful launch, may I add. A little bit confusion with the V1 token. However, that's all good. It's nothing of any complexity. But a lot of good things coming, a lot of good things planned. So yeah, excited to go over some of them.
Yeah, and that we do have plenty of. So we'll kind of go into a little bit about the latest upgrade first, the here and now sort of situation, and then of course we'll go into what's being planned on with the future. So for everyone posting away their questions, give us just a minute. We're going to go over the new information, and then we will then continue on about all your questions there. So as of now, this token has been launched. We did post the new token contract address in the general announcement, so please go check that out. Add that to your MetaMask wallet or Trust Wallet or whatever wallet that you might be using, and then please go into our DApp and enhance your tokens. Until you do that function of enhancing your PTX tokens to EPTX, you are not going to get that daily yield. So make sure you get on in there, get that enhanced, so let's get that rolling. In the meantime, we are now officially, we've been reduced to a 4% buy tax here for quite some time, but now we're also reduced to an 8% sales tax, right? So now we have a totally different buy and sales tax associated with this token compared to before. Instead of 13 and 18, we're down to 4 and 8. Like we mentioned in all the previous AMAs, that sales tax from 13 and 18 was never going to go up. In fact, it's gone way down. So that's a pretty good and exciting adaptation of the token itself. So we have a lot of kind of good things building on that end. Getting this token out is a good kind of first step to a next multiple other steps that we'll be working on. Obviously, we did release the website and the DApp last week as well, so please go check that out. We do have it routed to the new domain, but it's ptxcrypto.com. That's our new website domain. That's our URL, ptxcrypto.com, rather than protocol-x.io. So bookmark that, get that locked down. You can access our DApp from there and all that good stuff on that end. So I believe that's the biggest piece there. Brant did mention there was a little hiccup with the airdrop, but we did resolve that. So the tokens that you have for the new version are the correct amounts.
Sure. And please, everyone, yeah, make sure you're using the official contract. In regards to the DApp, there has been a few problems in regards to connection on Trust Wallet or SafePal. Rest assured, we are spending the entire week, and this will obviously go into some of our future updates as well. The week ahead is really building up from them foundations, right? So we've just relaunched. We've got the DApp, we've got the website. The website hasn't got really too many issues, but with the DApp obviously being fully web free, whenever you have a web free product, there's usually a problem. I mean, when is there not a problem in crypto, right? So there's not really any major problems. It's just some connectivity issues with the DApp, which is perfectly fine. I mean, the issue there is that when you use Trust Wallet to open certain DApps, it usually renders it straight to ERC20 instead of using BEP20. So we're currently implementing a fix now for all the Trust Wallet users and SafePal users. Another cool thing we're going to be doing with the DApp, and we'll touch base on it a little bit more later, is we will be working on upgrading the DApp, making it a little bit look more aesthetically pleasing. The core foundations of the DApp was built, and so was the website. But obviously, our main focus on this relaunch was making sure the website was as presentable as possible. So a lot of time went into the contracts and the website, and obviously we didn't want to say, "Hey, let's delay the launch." So we got the DApp. a lot of the D app is actually built. So the D app itself, a lot of it is hidden for you guys. A bit of alpha there. I mean, all of the X shares, X keys, and all them pages are already built. They're just not visible yet, nor will be visible until they go live. So expect a couple of hot fixes in the next couple of days or so. We've got some updates going for the D app. And Shib, speaking of the D app, we'll drop a little bit of that alpha, what everyone loves. The vaults, Shib. We've obviously been having a lot of discussions, and one thing I'm crazy about these vaults before we get into them, too soon is it's that whole sustainability side, right? And we've said it through the protocol. So as you may know, we have got a date set for X shares. Now I don't know if Shib wants to drop that. I'm not going to drop that. We have got a date ready for X shares. So in the meantime, it's all about building up PTX and growing PTX so that X shares is also successful, right? What we don't want to do is build X shares to be the king of the brand, and PTX lays behind. So we will be implementing some things. One of them things that we're looking to implement in the next couple of weeks, if not week or so, is vaults. Now, I'm not going to touch base on these too much. I will let Shib do that. However, what these vaults will be is essentially vaults where you can lock your PTX or EPTX, so to say, and you earn either a fixed yield or a higher yield. So, for example, if you've decided, hey, I'm going to basically lock my PTX for 3 or 6 months, you're a long-term guy, you're not going to bother selling anyways. You now have you will have the option to lock your PTX and earn a higher yield. Now, what this does essentially is takes out some of the circulating supply. Well, not only does that help in regards to buys and sells and also bullishness on the chart, because theoretically, right, if 40% of the token gets locked for 3 months, then that's 40% of the entire project that can't just dump on you, right? So people are going to sit there and go, hey, I've got 3 months or 6 months or 12 months there's a 20% less chance I'm going to get dumped on by whales. A lot of the whales are locked in this pool. I'm in a good place where I can comfortably buy more. And we're obviously going to have incentives around them times of the unlock to relock your tokens and grow from there, right? So these pools, if you haven't noticed already in our current staking pool, there is a 5% fee if you unlock within 7 days. Now, there's a very good reason why we have this. This fee does not go to the team. This fee is either sent to the holders, we're still confirming, or is just burned. So this isn't something that gets taxed and goes straight to the team. That's not something we do. However, with our taxes being so low, we do need to safeguard you guys as well as the project, that people aren't just going to say, hey, buy $50,000, put it in the pool for a couple of days, withdraw, and then dump on you guys. Because essentially, with the taxes being so low, people can do that, right? So another cool thing about these diamond vaults, I'll let Shib get into them, but the taxes as well. So it will be a scaling tax system. So, for example, if you've locked it for 12 months, it will start at a very high tax, so you can't just pull out. And then, obviously, the more time that goes by, you'll be able to withdraw and pay a tax. Now, once you go past a certain threshold or complete the lock period, then obviously you'll have a very minimal or no tax at all. But this is just a good way for us, especially with the X shares coming up as well, for people to be able to lock their tokens, for people to be able to differentiate what they're doing, right? Because you don't just want to buy a token and go, just staking it in the pool and that's it. You want to be able to go, hey, I've locked 10% of my tokens for a year. I've locked some for 3 months. I'm investing some into X shares upgrades. I'm investing some into X keys. I'm investing some. So what we want to do is build a plethora. I can never say that word, even though I try to every single time, of options for you to build. And that's why we never sat there and said we're going to call it stake PTX, because we want to have guys and have you guys, sorry, be able to have the option to do whatever. Now, these staking pools, they won't be, you don't have to. You don't have to lock your tokens. That's not the sort of project we are. We are just obviously implementing them so you can have that option. They will have incentives for you to lock your tokens. Someone just asked what are the timeframes. Realistically, probably 3, 6, and 12 months. That's something we'll confirm at a later point. However, when they are released. So Shib, if you want to talk a little bit more about these, if I haven't bambled up enough already, and obviously what your thoughts are on them.
Yeah, so there's a few different ways to look at it. So in reference to the timelines, I like the idea of, even just a 1 week and then all the way up to, 12 months kind of thing, right? So ideally just including a little bit of incentive for people to lock for a short period of time is nice if they want to. But of course, we've seen it with other projects where locking for a longer time is helpful for them as well because they just want to lock their tokens and maybe get a different sort of adaptation to it. But that being said, there is pros and cons to everything. Of course, I think ideally there's even an additional way to look at it. And let's say you could lock it for 3 months, and we are at 1.77% APR right now. Again, a lot of these details are still being worked out. We're kind of working with the dev now. It would be pretty cool to say, hey, if you lock it here today for 3 months, you get locked in at the 1.77% daily APR rate, or for the 12 months. So now when everyone else is earning 0.58% in month 11, you're still earning 1.77% in month 11. So this could be some ways to look at it where it's not necessarily massively increasing the rates, but of course this is all to be determined. Still kind of thinking that process out because it could even just be like a bonus kind of mechanism as well. So a lot of different ways you could work it, to be honest, and it's an interesting thing where people, like you said, they don't have to. I see Ronan here said, "Yeah, I'm not going to lock it for 3 months." I feel you, man. A lot of people won't lock it, but many more will lock it if they want to from there. But we're not going to force anybody. Your daily enhanced rate stays the exact same as the tokenomics defined in pre-sale, and for that 1.77% decrease by 10% each month over 12 months, that stays the exact same. This is just another element to encourage people to lock their tokens if they so choose to do so. So there's
No, yeah, it's a very common thing as well. If you've been involved in any staking or also compounding protocol, you can either just literally enhance your tokens and bam, you've got that bog standard, the flat SEM model, right? But if you go, look, I'm buying $1,000, I'm not going to touch it for a year anyway, or you've bought $100, I'm not going to touch it for a year or 3 months or 6 months. I want to invest it in the long term. Then you've got them options. It's not you don't have to lock it. You don't have to go, all right, guys, we've changed our mind. Now you need to lock it for a year. It's not like that. You could put 10% into a 12-year, 12-month lock, or you put 20%. You can differ. And that's um, and that's exactly what we can do, right? So there's always the options. It's not a guaranteed thing you can do. It's not a guaranteed sort of how to put it. You don't have to put 100% in. You could put a little amount, as little as you want, and then use the others for the rest of the ecosystem. Now that's just if you're a long-term believer, right? Or if you go, hey, the project's doing really well, I want to lock them for a month, or if you really want to lock for 12 months, you can. Now, it's just a cool way to get some of the circulating supply locked. I know myself, I'll be locking my tokens. Now, it's just a way to help not only sales on the chart, but also people from the outside coming in going, hey, actually, I wasn't going to buy this, but it looks like a lot of the supply is actually locked. So if a lot of the supply is locked, then I've got less chance of people dumping on my head. So it's completely down to you. It's completely in your park how you distribute funds and how you lock them. But 100%, as I said, it's not guaranteed. Now, enough on the vaults. We'll have obviously more updates coming for you guys in regards to that. But we do have sort of a structured timeline that we've been discussing, right? One of them is obviously the LMS, which you guys have been, waiting for. We are still discussing options. We are making that one of our next priorities. So we are looking to get that before X shares. However, we are still, discussing that possibility. Now we need to look at the feasibility side of it all, and how it will work. In regards to the entire ecosystem, we're still toying it and seeing if it is still feasible, if it is, worth it. But we need to look into that more and make sure that it's actually good, especially with what we're looking to implement, right? With all the locks and all the time frames and such. So we are still looking into that aspect. We're looking into the LMS system, but obviously after the vaults, if we do implement it, that would be to be next sort of thing. And then obviously we have the long awaited X shares, which will be coming hopefully at the end of the month. See, one of my biggest standpoints on LMS systems is it seems, we spend a lot of time as a protocol doing a lot of market research, right? We've got a lot of time that we've spent making sure that we're not making the same mistakes as other projects do. Now, one of the main concerns we've had in recent times is it seems like any other project apart from Horde, their LMS systems are not working efficiently. So we're still making sure that we have the right ideas, the right system, and the right way to implement it before we just go, hey, here's an LMS, and then it ends up breaking the entire ecosystem and ruin what we have built and what we're building, right? So we want to make sure we're doing the right things for the protocol. We've got an insane foundation here, and we're looking to build up from them. But Shib, sorry, over to you. I do love to ramble in these AMAs.
No, you're good. You're good. And we'll kind of go into the elements. I do want to get to the NFTs here. So hang on, everyone. I will get to the NFTs in just a minute. But as you guys know, I think this is relevant to the community because we are also partnered with them. But Spring is also looking to potentially shut down their LMS now as well. They put out an announcement today. You can go read about it if you want. But Spring's doing super well too. Like they have a lot of volume. They're a bigger project. That's where I start getting a little bit of cold feet. It's like, okay, we start assessing every single project who has ever had this LMS utilized with their token. If you listed them all down the line, it might only be one standing genuinely, and that's Horde. So are they the outlier, or is everybody else the outlier? And if any of you have taken some very basic statistic classes, then you know what an outlier is, and it is what it is. So we have to consider that stuff here. Are we going to want to spend 10 grand and then it just fall on our face? I don't know. That doesn't seem like a great idea to me, but we're still assessing everything. So we got to make that decision as well. That new information in Spring literally came up the moment that our AMA popped live. So we'll kind of have to look into that as well. The partnership with Spring is healthy, guys. By the way, we like them, they like us. So don't fear on that. I'm talking strictly on the LMS side at that point there. So lots of things we have to consider here. But that being said, there's pros and cons to everything, and I think one of the pros to this world would be the XShare NFTs. Am I right, everybody? So the XShare NFTs, we are still working with the developer to see exactly when they can go live from a UI standpoint. But contracts are done, contracts are audited, lots of good things going on there. I would personally like these NFTs to go live in the next 3 to 4 weeks. November 1 would be a great timeline. Ideally, we can get the locked vaults out before then. So that's a transition there. And then drop the XShare NFTs along with PUSD simultaneously on or around November 1st. That's my goal. I think the NFTs are where we're going to be able to help differentiate ourselves from many others in the space while we are still growing and developing PTX and that whole side of the ecosystem very, very cleanly and very directly, right? So that's what I'm looking to do there. Again, that could be subject to change. I think we are about ready from the developmental side, to be perfectly honest, but we know devs are devs, right? I cannot predict exactly what's going to go on there. Ideally, we can get them to put us into a beta mode in the next 2 weeks. We'll play with it on our end, maybe even give you guys an opportunity to try to break it for us. And then ideally, we can get it live on November 1st. I think that's a great timeline. I get a little butterflies right now even thinking about it. So I think that could be a pretty exciting adaptation here going into the next month. And then that could lead us into the future from there. So that'll allow us to get kind of the bulk of our ecosystem out within the first few months of ever being live, which I think is pretty incredible. And we are actively, this is another thing, I don't want to go into details just yet. We are still actively developing how to increase or at least reasonably.
Shib, I was gonna do it. I was itching. I was itching so hard to say this, but I knew you was gonna do it. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. So I'm not going to drop exactly how, but we are still trying to figure out how to make the returns from these NFTs very much so sustainable. And maybe we can even set a floor price if some of the things that we're working on do happen to materialize, which would be nice. And by a floor price, I mean a floor daily APR. That would be pretty cool. And it's not going to be like 1.77%. It'll be probably somewhere around the 0.5% as a floor, and then exceeded from there based off of some other returns. If we can get this worked out, I think that'll be pretty cool. Where at the worst case, you're getting 0.5%, and on the best case, you're getting whatever they can produce via the other aspects of the protocol. So that's what we're working on our end. And shout out to some of those people who helped us come to these ideas because quite frankly, they're living right under our nose because I've been personally doing this for a minute. So it is what it is. But if we can make this work, I think that'll be a pretty cool differentiating factor from us compared to anything else out there. So
Yeah, but I just want to touch on that a little bit as well. And what you guys need to understand here and is if you put two and two together and you start thinking about this properly. So we're introducing vaults, right, where people will want to lock and upgrade. I mean, lock and earn higher APR, right? Now, not only will they lock, and people will, I know not a lot of people will, but there will be people, and I'm not even saying this from an egotistical point of view. There are people that will believe in the project for, that 12 months or that 6 months and go, hey, I'm not going to sell anyway, so I want that good APR. So not only are you going to have portions of the ecosystem locked, we currently have things building in place where tokens are burning every single time someone buys. 3% of the token is burned, and it's not sent to a burn wallet. That is a true burn, so it's completely removed from the circulating supply. Now, with all the things that we're implementing for burns, right, you have to understand when these NFTs drops initially, you'll be able to purchase them with BUSD, right, or BNB. Now, once you get to a point where you have to upgrade them, people are going to have to use PTX. Now, if the plan SHIB is talking about works, as you upgrade, that yield percentage goes higher, right? So daily you'll be earning more. So people are going to want to go, hey, instead of me earning so much and so from PTX, I can now diversify and go, hey, I want to earn X amount in X shares. Now, in that transition, you have to understand people are going to have to burn their PTX to do that. So not only are we bringing more locked supply in the ecosystem, the burn is rapidly going to increase. We're also going to have people burning tokens to upgrade their X shares. So everyone sitting here going, okay, so how do X shares benefit the ecosystem? The more bullish X shares are, the more bullish PTX is. Because yes, quintessentially you can buy with the BNB, right? But if you're sitting there on a massive stack of PTX, you're going to want to be able to earn as much BUSD or as much BNB as possible, right? So people are going to be racing to upgrade them NFTs, and that's my personal opinion. But with obviously the plans, hopefully they come to fruition. Now, everything's starting to add up. If you start putting two and two together, everything's done to, even if it doesn't directly affect PTX, to make PTX as bullish as possible. So people sit there and go, hey, why do I want to buy PTX? And in a couple of weeks, hopefully before these X shares come, you can say, well, this much of the supply is locked, this much is burned. We've got a bunch of whales locked for 6 or 3 months. We've got this much people locked for 12 months. We've got huge burns coming. So people are gonna have that. People are gonna understand when you look at a token from the outside, right? And you see, okay, well, there's 6 whales at the top that hold 7% of the supply. They could dump on me at any time. People actually do this stuff, right? Need to understand. People need to understand that having these incentives for people to lock, burn, and essentially give away their tokens is extremely important. Now, with the things that we're planning and these vaults is a very, very core part of reducing that circulating supply. Now, yes, in the future, there will be more circulating supply. But what you need to understand is in the meantime, people are going to be burning PTX at such an excruciating rate and the buy and burns we can do and everything along them lines. And there's so many things we could do to reduce it in the meantime. Now, that's obviously me brambling. That's going to become a thing now. Thank you very much to whoever invented that. But if you've got questions, now I think it's the time for us to start answering the questions before I bramble too much. But a lot of exciting things to come. Before I answer questions, just going to touch base on what we're going to be doing over the next week or so. We're going to start applying and pushing for the CMC and CoinGecko probably by the end of the week. We're just waiting for some logistic sides. List on all the regular platforms. Start pushing more marketing as such in different avenues. We're also going to be pushing some DApp updates. I think that's a very important part. Make sure you know, if the entire ecosystem surrounding a D app, we need to make sure that is enticing. It looks really good. So we're going to be focused on some D app upgrades. We're going to be focusing on the bug fixes, focusing on getting these vaults either implemented or, you know, almost implemented, and then obviously finalizing X shares. So there's a lot going on in the background. As Shib said, we're still deciding the LMS system. You know, that spring news was very new to us. We don't want to do something that jeopardizes our future, right? Especially after such a successful relaunch and such good plans in the mix. We don't want to just do something for the sake of doing it, right? Um, but yeah, so feel free. I know, Ari, I know you're on stage. I know you're dying to ask some questions. We have got some in chat. So if you want to ask your questions, man, we can get them going.
You're just saying if anyone has any questions while I'm sitting here next to you on stage.
If I'm honest with you, I didn't even see you. But yeah, go ahead, Ari. My apologies.
That's basically the point, you know. We go somewhere, real life, actual questions, and I just appear from backstage, just standing there. All right. So, questions about legendary NFTs. How do those fit into the greater kind of upgrade path of the Dora NFTs? Because we were talking about how locking up, and there'll be an incentive to increase your door. Do legendary NFTs start at the top, start at the bottom? Where do they fit in? Do they have any growth potential? Do they just sit there?
Yeah, so legendary NFTs are literally the top of the barrel there. You cannot upgrade from there, and they're only given away in special events like kind of we went into with our Medium article on them. So they're their own thing. You don't buy them. There's no way for you to say, hey, I want to pay you for them. Well, you can't. You have to do some sort of defined event that we put out there into the space that gives you the highest percentage of the trading bot revenue and the other revenue proportional rate. It also gives you some voting power, which will give you basically the same voice as anybody here on the team, and also a little bit of one-on-one interaction, kind of like a, I don't want to say a whale group, but projects do those little whale telegrams or whatever. Ours will kind of be that same theory, but it's just with those who are very heavily engaged with our protocol. Like we have a couple members already here that are, they could be whales, but they definitely earn their legendary NFTs by simply just being engaged with the community on all levels. So yeah, there's no upgradable aspect to them because they're already top of the mountain, top tier of the revenue share NFTs.
I recall something about max pre-sale holders getting legendary NFTs. Is that
Yes.
accurate?
Yep, as long as they kept their original total count, that original base level.
Yeah, so if you were a pre-sale holder, you're probably sitting around 500,000 plus tokens right now. So yeah, as long as you're keeping the basis and you're hodling along with us, then yeah, you will get airdrop one of them. That will be disclosed more towards the time. But obviously, if you've stuck around by then, you've obviously supported the project from the get-go. So yeah, you most definitely deserve one of them. Help from the ground up, right?
Was there any particular aspect of the protocol that the NFTs do not provide revenue share on? At least notable things?
Yeah, so the NFTs are kind of bringing money in from a different place besides within the ecosystem itself, right? So we're incorporating PTX with it by having the X keys, of course, but by having these other defined trading bots and also the sales tax associated with the XShare distribution wallet, that allows that money to be real. That's real money. I'm not gonna, we did just talk about how we might be able to set like an actual floor return, which would be pretty cool. But that being said, this is money derived generally from outside of the protocol itself. So it's never going to be putting any load on the back of the project or, requiring us to sell tokens in order to pay out. None of that will be occurring. These will be paying out in PUSD. So it's actually paying out an appreciating asset over time, which is pretty cool. And the money is derived from generally outside of the protocol, the sales tax associated with the token. That's kind of the basis of what those NFT revenue share models are coming from.
So yeah, that's a cool thing as well. Shiba's just touched base on there. A little bit of alpha actually. So once PSD is actually launched, obviously you guys know it's an appreciating stablecoin, right? And it strives off buys and sells. So if we're buying, say for example, we had $10,000 to distribute, right? We're gonna distribute that to you guys in PUSD. Yes, you'll have to pay a little bit of tax on it, right? If you decide to hold it now, that's gonna help grow PUSD. So if we are purchasing PUSD as a company, well, as a brand, as a token, and distributing it to tokens to holders, that gives PUSD itself life and growth. So if we do have a crazy growth spell, and we buy $100,000 of PUSD and distribute it, even the sales from that will grow out. So yeah, we're extremely excited for that. That will come at a later date, as Shib said. But yeah, a lot of good things to come with PUSD, especially with rewarding certain holders, especially from X shares. We're probably looking towards X shares release for PUSD as it sort of entwines. But as I said, we're basically starting from I like to call this day zero, this relaunch with a lot more of our build complete. I mean, someone said it in chat earlier about how actually it was in Paul's video. If you haven't seen Paul's video, he gives a really good overview of the project. He said about having to get things out there, right? We planned PTX a long time. It was a 6 or 8 week process of building everything. And unfortunately, sometimes in the space things don't go your way, right? So we had to scramble a little bit last minute to make sure everything was sorted and fixed. So luckily I know the price is below pre-sale, but the amount of support we've had from such a small holder base has given us that time for you guys to go, you know what, we believe in you. Here's your little chance to rebuild. Show us what you've got. And we do appreciate that. We really, really do, because, we're very, very lucky that people didn't just sell off. We're glad you guys see the vision, and we do appreciate that build time that we got. So now we're in a position where technically, the reason why I call it day zero is we're at that day zero relaunch. We've got all of the ecosystem audited, everything's there. We're just waiting on some UI stuff. We're now in a position where everything we do is going to be an upgrade. And that's one thing I really want to stress in this AMA. We're at that point now where everything we do for the ecosystem is a fully upgrade. It's not fixes, it's not repairs, it's not okay, we need to change this because we can't get listed on CMC. Everything that comes out now and everything we're discussing is going to be something to better the ecosystem, which is really, really exciting. So now we're no longer in limbo of having to fix things. With full steam ahead, release the vaults, release X shares, release PUSD, release XSwap, and all of that good stuff. And we don't have to sit there and go, okay, but now we can't get listed on CMC. We have to rebuild. And that leads on to another question. Is CMC and CG planned with the NFT release? No, we're going to apply at the end of this week. We're just waiting for a few logistical sides before we apply to make sure that we can get listed as soon as possible. But once we've applied, you guys will know, because we have to technically tweet it out anyway. So you guys will be fully in the loop. But Ari, sorry, if you've got another question, feel free to go ahead, mate.
You know me, I always have more questions. So what is this applying to CMC with X shares? Are you talking about ePTX or X shares?
Yeah, so it will be ePTX. XShares is an NFT, so it will have its own separate platforms that you would apply on for, for exposure, like rarity and all that sort of stuff. Although it won't, in essence, have crazy rarity stats, obviously you will. So we'll be able to have different sort of exposure for the NFTs, and obviously it's a completely different ball game, right? So we need to entice people to go, hey, here's the NFTs. And you know what? Surprisingly, and one thing that I'm really bullish about is considering the NFTs, and a lot of our community is from the auto compounding slash rebates community. There's a lot of bullish people in the NFTs, and we haven't even touched that NFT marketplace yet. The sort of market. So we're currently still working on a specific market, which is crypto DeFi, and we haven't even really touched on that NFT side yet, which is really, really exciting. And it's really nice to sit there and think that from day one these NFTs will have that utility. And we already touched base on the sort of gamification side, which we're still working on in the background and growing it from them. But there's so much already laid out flat for these NFTs that we're ready to go. As Shib said, these NFTs are ready to go. However, we're not going to dilute PTX. I think PTX deserves its time to shine, deserves its time to be built, have things built up for it to grow. But yeah, I'm rambling again. NFX shares will have their own sort of platforms, but yeah, EPTX and PTX. It won't be EPTX. We wouldn't bother listing that on CMC, because you can't purchase, trade, or sell it. So it would be PTX that gets listed. The whole point of EPTX is to obviously enhance and do a lot of things in the ecosystem. And I think when you look back on this AMA to maybe an AMA in 2 months' time, you go, hey, it finally makes sense if you don't understand already why it's called enhanced and not staked.
So in that vein, there's a lot of interconnectability between what you can take, what you can enhance, what you can convert from one way to another. For example, X keys, upgrade, X shares. So with that in mind, now that we've transitioned to PTX and ePTX, which of the two will be the one that we can trade and convert to assets such as X keys?
So ideally, that's going to be the EPTX token. I believe that's how it's going to be coded in there. So generally speaking, that EPTX token is going to be what you utilize to interact with the entirety of the ecosystem via the X keys and all that other stuff there. So kind of think of it that way. PTX is that base, ProtocolX, that's our fundamental token. ePTX is how you interact with our ecosystem. It's basically like the utility token of PTX. Obviously, you could swap it one for one back and forth to PTX or ePTX and not really have an issue there.
Speaking of tokens and price stability, Jib, you probably know what I'm going to ask. What's the process going on with the price stabilization bot that Kinsey was working on?
Yeah, so we don't have any updates on that. So there was some deficiencies with there that were just kind of brought up to me via other sources, where theirs is basically just a standardized trade bot and not on chain. But also, we went into a pretty long little winded answer about an LMS in general early on. And I think if anybody wants to find out every single project that uses an LMS currently out there, Horde might be the only one standing at this point. So it really makes me question, am I going to want to spend more of your guys' money to build something that, quite frankly, isn't going to work if that's the case? Or are we going to be an outlier and it does work? Those are the questions that I'm now starting to ask here. Like I did mention earlier, Love Spring, we're partners with them. They're great people, great project. They have a lot of organic volume and they're very successful thus far, and their LMS didn't work. And they have a good LMS. It's on chain, it's well designed. So I don't know, man. I don't want to go waste money and put an LMS out there and give people a false sense of security. Then it doesn't work, right? That would be a shame. It would destroy people's trust in not only the product, but also in the team and our decision making process. So that's what I'm getting at. Not sure if we're going to move forward with it or not, to be honest. I got to think a little bit more.
But it's all about interchangeable roadmaps, isn't it? You got to be realistic. I mean, if you're sticking straight to a roadmap and 100% of the plans, you get some new information and don't act on that, then that's where you're gonna have your downfall, right? So it's about being proactive and making sure that you're taking useful information. I mean, you know, why are we gonna try and go? Okay, so only one of these projects with an LMS has survived. The other 35 of them have completely tanked and gone to zero. Um, is it worth the risk? Is that statistically worth a risk of trying to be that number two? Is there realistically? I mean, we've got so many aspects, and we said it even on earlier on AMAs. Is that this LMS system is an additional bonus? It's not something crazy that we're main focusing on. It's not our core selling point. And I said it very early on in AMAs is that we're not using this LMS to be that core focus. It's a cool thing, but we're building out an ecosystem. We're not Our selling point isn't an LMS. If we introduce an LMS, then cool. However, if you look based on our current holders, I mean, if we're implementing vaults, we're implementing the X shares where people have to burn PTX anyways. Do you actually need an LMS? Is it going to add an extra point where the project stops growing? So there's all of these feasibility aspects of we've got so much coming to counter price deflation that is it worth it? Is there any actual point of risk in implementing an LMS, and that obviously we're still discussing. However, it doesn't really change much in the project. Yes, the price will fluctuate more. However, if the LMS goes wrong, the price goes to zero. So it is bittersweet. However, we are focusing on building out the ecosystem, rather than worrying about an LMS system, because I personally, and I think Shib would agree, I don't think it will have much effect on our current ecosystem. I think there's so many ways that people are going to end up burning their tokens rather than selling them, um, than having this LMS implemented, right? So it's all about feasibility, and we're definitely still, thinking about that now.
That's fair. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I think ultimately, if the team has done the research and realized that this isn't worth resources or isn't worth the risk, then ultimately it's not a good choice. And uh, I trust you to make the right decision.
No, I appreciate that, Harry, and that goes to everyone else as well. Is that one thing that we've not done is, dive headfirst into rubbish. I mean, we can very much easily do it just for the sake of making you guys happy. But then when that LMS goes to crap, and then we sit there going, well, we thought it would happen. If we're having to question ourselves on something, as Shib said, then, why would we do it? It goes along sort of them lines, right? If we're second guessing it, then we need to do more research before we decide to implement it, right? We can't just go, hey, we're gonna implement it. This is what we're gonna do, even though we're sitting there and going, hey, well, some of these projects that are doing really, really well, are caving their LMS systems, and we've got to make sure that it's right and the fundamentals are there. But our main focus right now is, as Eric just said, is the use cases, and even something like vaults, which aren't a use case in essence, still brings more value to the token, because it's all about locking that and making that supply scarce. And the whole point of our SEM is making that supply scarce, making it so people haven't got millions of coins just sitting around and can dump on people. So if we can implement all of them burn features and implement all of them sort of things, then we're able to, build that ecosystem without having to have an LMS anyway.
What is the next project to be being worked on after PUSD and X shares?
So as far as our roadmap goes, obviously we have the contracts already done for everything that's on that roadmap, including the X swap as well as the lottery system. So then we have to kind of assess that from there. Those are very, very expensive to build from the front end side, to be perfectly honest. So we got to make some decisions on exactly how to implement that. That's sort of why we're developing these vaults already on the DApp, because we can do most of the things that an X swap would do without spending, I don't want to tell people how much money these things cost, but without spending a pretty substantial amount of money on building that just yet. It doesn't mean we're not going to build it. I still would like to get that out, to be honest. But if we can start bringing different real use cases to the project quicker at a more economic level that are just simple to use, easy to work with, that's a pretty good thing. I think the lottery is going to be pretty interesting as well once we get that up. So the next steps here, we just launched our, kind of upgraded token. We launched a new website, new DApp. Then we're going to go into PUSD and the Xshare. Then I'm going to kind of refine those for a bit, make sure that those are working as they should, and that the integration with PTX is working appropriately. Ideally, they can start minting out, and then we can start utilizing X keys over time and all that good stuff there. And then push forward from there and start making those later on decisions, so we can keep building in the long term and not just, kind of get stagnant, which is literally, we just had a meeting right before this, and we don't want to be stagnant really at any point. We constantly want to be innovating, producing something for you guys to interact with, whatever it might be. So those are kind of the next things on the roadmap, and that'll be going live here in the near future.
Yeah, because if you sit there and think, right, we take community feedback very, very serious, right? As much as you may not think we do or don't notice it, if you actually look at the chats and the general chats, it's always when X shares, when, PTX and all of that. So what we need to do is sit there and go, hey, what do the people actually want? And we need to focus on these, drilling on these. We need to bring that scarcity to PTX, bring the use case to PTX, and bring X shares out fully with fire with insane use cases that even if, and don't take this the wrong way, if X shares ends up doing 100 times better than PTX, that's going to have a ripple effect, and PTX will grow from that because there's so many ways that you have to use PTX to even upgrade an X share that people will buy and hold and learn about PTX anyway. So the main focus I'd say for the next month or so is the vaults, the X shares, refining the D app, getting everything integrated, make everything nice, get established, meeting on CMC, getting out there, marketing, and growing the brand and making sure we've got that core foundation because we've said it from the start. We're not trying to make this a pump and dump project. We want to make it sustainable. We want to grow it, and we want to make sure that it's got different avenues for you guys to earn and use. And that brings me back to the point of, yes, you may not want to lock, you don't have to, but you've got the option to, and then you may not want to upgrade, but you've got the option to, right? So we want to give people options. We don't want people to just buy and go, okay, all I could do is enhance. We want people to enhance and go, wow, okay, so I'm going to use 10% for that. That's doing great. So I'm going to go a bit into that. We want to bring some fun and bring some use to the generic quote unquote rebase token, right? We don't want to just be a quote unquote rebase token. We want to be, innovative. We want to bring different stuff to that sort of community rather than just saying, here's an APY, rebase and chill. That's not what we want to do. We want to bring some fun, bring some charisma, and make it an actual really fun and enticing ecosystem. Harry,
What are the
oh yeah, sorry. After this question, I'm gonna jump into the chat's questions because we've got a couple piling up. So yeah, if you don't mind, sorry not to cut you off, but yeah, we've got like 7 or 8 questions in the chat as well.
Oh no, I fully understand. What are these vaults that you all are talking about?
So the vaults are time vaults essentially. So it's a way for us to take circulating supply out of the ecosystem. So if people can lock and earn a higher APY or a higher return or earn a set return, then what we're able to do is it brings a really good overlook of the project. If people can come into the project and see, wow, 40% of people have locked their tokens for the next 3 months at a minimum, people are going to sit there and go, we want to buy into this. We want to, it's all mind games. Like realistically, the entire of DeFi is mind games. If we can burn and we can lock and we can have as many, I don't want to say it, diamond holders and loyal holders and actually build out this ecosystem, it's a lot more appealing than if someone goes to BSC scan and goes, okay, so there's 10 whales at the top controlling 10% of the supply that can dump on me at any time. But if they come into the ecosystem and say, hey, all of the top whales, they're all holding for 6-7 months. We've got these vaults now. It's a really good way to one make in the short term and the long term supply scarce. People burn their PTX, and obviously there'll be taxes on these vaults. If people decide to lock and withdraw early, they're going to pay a fee for doing that, which will benefit the entire ecosystem.
When are these vaults coming out?
We're looking at actually implementing them as soon as possible. So I'm not going to say, I don't want to give an exact time frame, but I would say it will be the next thing, essentially, that will come out. The next sort of update that we have will be the vaults in a realistic term.
Sounds good. My DMs are always open. Shib doesn't need to know.
Yeah, that's fine. So there, no, Ari, thank you for your questions. You always bring the fire ones. Let me get some of the ones from the chat. No, I appreciate you coming up. You're great. We've got a couple of questions here. Eric has said, what's your thoughts, Shiblord, on the trading bot performance so far? I noticed that for 2 weeks we ended up positive because you stepped in and nailed to get us positive. Is your intention to continue to do this and trust the bots long term? Have you thought about changing anything near term, or have we made any changes to investments?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Eric also asked about the grid trading, so I'll kind of hit that twofold. And to start, yeah, I've had to step in quite a bit on the trade bots. So I have refined quite a bit already, and I'm kind of looking to refine even further as we start kind of pushing into the future. I think I've figured out some different mechanisms, and quite frankly, I think I can. I'm again not trying to be egotistical by any means, but I've shown myself that I can way outperform what these trade bots do personally. So it might just be that I need to take a little bit more of a, front hand into these. Whenever they're pushing on these trades, I should probably get in there and already know if it looks good or not, and kind of play with it from there. But then again, that could also drop you in a hole. So I'm trying to just eliminate some of the fat of this, but also make it a little bit cleaner for all of us to work on. I know that there's some other ways to kind of mitigate that risk and allow it just to maybe grow a little bit slower, and maybe with a little bit more of the user integration from me. But I'm kind of assessing all that there, and I think I'll get that refined. That's why we're giving a couple months for the NFTs, to be honest. I want to have these trade strategies locked down as autonomous as they can be by the time the NFTs go out, so that the community's confident with them. So that's why I'm also looking into the grid bots and stuff like that as well. Grid trading's pretty cool. So for example, grid trading today, I started up at 9 a.m. my time, and it's coming up on 4 p.m. my time. I am up 0.59% on this grid trading software. That's pretty decent. That ain't bad, right, for a day. And honestly, that's generally how it does in a day. In any 24 hours, it'll usually fluctuate from minus 0.3% up to about 1.3 to 1.5%. So if I keep an eye on it, I can close it out at 0.5 to 1% pretty much every day. Every day that I've ran it, I could do this. So those things I'm looking into as well. I just continue. This is what I like doing. This is what I really enjoy. To be perfectly honest, I like that kind of number side of it. So there's going to be a lot of refining, I'm sure. And I'll find the strategies that I want to utilize for the grid. I'll kind of clean up the trade bots themselves, because like I said, that 1 week we would have been way down if I just let it do its thing. But I hit a 42%er. So that's cool, but that's sketchy, right? If it just did that. So things like that we got to work on, of course. Kind of get that a little cleaner and identify the right ones, if that makes sense. But if not, good thing I have a decent brain still at my ripe age of 29, so we'll keep things working.
Yeah, great. We've got one more question, really about when lottery. Shib?
Yeah, so a lottery is a little bit more down the road. So originally the tokenomics of the lottery were directly incorporated with the X swap, the exchange. So if we decide to kind of reorder how that works, we can still implement a lottery system that is incentivized for people to use without the X swap yet live, and just incorporate it with the DApp. So that's possible too. So these NFTs ideally are coming out November 1st or around there. And then the lottery will probably, in my personal opinion, would be that next following step of the one that I'd like to somehow get out there, even if it's a little bit more basic in the early days, and then we can expand it and grow it and really make it more adaptable to the climate in the future. That could be a good next step. Hopefully, potentially, maybe same month. If not, we're talking a little bit into December, which I don't think would be a bad thing. We got to work with our dev teams, of course, and make sure all that lines up and the tokenomics makes sense.
Thank you. Just gonna have a little look now, see if there's any more questions. If I've missed your question, please feel free to post it again. It's been quite a decent AMA actually. We've got a lot explained. And yeah, just that's really it. One thing I really want to stress is I've said it during this AMA is, we're really at that build phase now, right? Where we can build and grow. We're not at that limbo stage anymore. Last week we were at a really bad limbo stage, and a couple of weeks ago, sorry, the reason why we was at that limbo stage is because we had to make changes, right? Now we're able to actually grow the token and grow the brand, which is really, really cool in my opinion. I'm really excited for that. Now, we've got a question here for Shib. Question about the revenue share in NFTs. How much of PTX revenue will be shared, and how much of it will be reinvested into protocol to maintain sustainability? Shib, take the floor.
Yeah, so I assume they mean how much of the X share revenue and not PTX revenue. That's my assumption of that information there. So I'm going to go off of that. If I am off that, just let me know and I'll kind of adjust on the fly here. But to answer that very, very specifically, 100% of the mint revenue for the NFTs, for the extra NFTs, goes back into the protocol, into the trade bot mechanisms identified, trade strategies identified, and maybe even a little bit of different trade strategies that we've kind of also worked on where we can ideally set a good floor APR, which would be super cool. So once we get that going, 50% of the revenue share from the trade bots themselves via that tokenomic, that amount of BNB that's accumulated from the mints goes back to those who own the X shares. And then 30% is compounded back into the bots of the profits, of course, to allow that number to ideally increase over time. So the value being traded today will be much less than the value being traded on in 6 months, for example, ideally, right? And then how I have the current tokenomics laid out, I have the remaining 20% as 10% going to the treasury, 10% going to the LMS pool. Now, if we decide to not move forward with an LMS pool, that opens up another 10% that we can kind of work with from there. Maybe we can do 60% back to the users, 40% back compounded, whatever the case might be. I'd prefer to use that 10% to go back to the tokens, that 10% to a direct buyback and burn of the PTX token. That's a fantastic idea as well. So that'll kind of open that up. If we choose to not do the LMS, I'll find a way to utilize that 10% for a direct beneficiary to the token holders themselves of PTX, because I believe that's the only fair way to do it. So almost all of it is going back to all of it's going back to the protocol either directly or indirectly. And then we'll kind of piece all that together as we evolve in reference to the LMS percentage if we do happen to go a little bit of a different direction there. Which, to be honest with you guys, I'm leaning on going towards a different direction. I'm just going to say that straight up. Thus far, the information presented to me, what I've been able to read and assess, it's not looking great. So I don't want to give you guys that false hope. Spend your money that you gave into us from the pre-sale for something that might not work. I don't really love that kind of idea personally. So we'll continue to think about that and keep you guys informed, obviously, every step of the way there.
Brilliant. And I think the last question we've got, if I'm not mistaken, is got a cash. What is the enhanced PTX bounty trigger? So essentially what that is a way to reward you guys for engaging in the app, and people go in there to check their rebases or their staking all the time, right? So it's a way for you to activate the rebases instead of how before people would send a token to themselves. You don't want to do that anymore. You literally click that, you're rewarded for basically saying, hey, let's get the rewards going. So it's basically an emissions trigger. So it distributes all of the tokens to all of the holders who are currently staked. But yeah, there's other cool ways we explained in the chat. You can actually, and we're not really advertising it because we don't want people to get confused. But if you really, really want to, you can actually just send BNB to the ePTX contract, and it will automatically purchase PTX and enhance it for you. So that's another cool way you can do it without having to actually use the D app. Just send BNB to the contract, and you can literally, it will automatically stake for you, which is great. And obviously in the future, we're going to look at introducing other cool ways and things you guys can do. But yeah, no, brilliant AMA, guys. Look, thank you so much for the questions. As we always say, look, we're always in chat. We're currently in build mode, if I'm completely honest with you. We've got a lot to do, a lot to build, a lot of things going on, and we want to make sure we're bringing the right things at the right time. Now, a lot of people, when X shares, the 1st of November is the estimated time frame. When vaults, that will probably be the next update. A lot of things come in. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But for myself, I just want to thank you guys very, very much for coming. And Shib, I'll pass the floor to you.
Yep, so update on the grid trading, up 0.65%. Let's go. So just going to shout out that. Thank you all for joining in here. This is actually my first Discord AMA in like a week or 2 weeks or something. So I love being here. Thank you, Brand, for holding down the fort while I was gone. I did a Twitter Spaces one. If you guys are not aware, we do Twitter Spaces AMAs every Friday at 2 p.m. UTC, if my brain was working right there. And then we can kind of get all that going as well. Mondays and Fridays, Monday in the Discord, Fridays on the Twitter Spaces. We get all the recordings up onto our YouTube. So reach out for them. If you guys have any questions throughout the week, simply post away in the main chat, post away in the AMA Questions Weekly, tag us directly, whatever you need to do. Let us know. We're happy to help you out. We have a great mod team and obviously an amazing community that'll likely answer your questions even before we do. So shout out to all you guys there. Thank you all sincerely for joining us again on our weekly Alpha Monday AMA, where we dropped lots of alpha today on this beautiful October 3rd, 2022. Happy fall to wherever you are in the world. And peace out, fam. Shout out to Brand. We'll catch you all pretty soon.